بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم آمين يا رب الكريم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. A very warm welcome to all of you from myself, Imam Shuaib Mansouri. I work as Regional Development Manager and head the Education Department at National Zakat Foundation Canada. And on behalf of the organization NZF Canada, a very warm welcome to you and Ramadan Mubarak. Today is the first day of Ramadan and we are bringing to you a very timely webinar and are privileged to be joined by Sheikh Mufti Taha Masood, who will be talking about advanced fiqh related to zakat on investments, businesses, how to calculate zakat on pensions, RRSPs, RESPs, and so much more. Before I hand over the stage to Mufti Taha, I would like to remind all of you about the various resources that you have at your disposal brought to you by National Zakat Foundation Canada. These resources are completely free of charge, meant for you in order to empower you with the knowledge of zakat. You see, at National Zakat Foundation, our mandate, our goal is not just to collect zakat and properly this amana, this trust that you have given to us, to properly distribute it. Not just that, but at the same time to empower you in light of the Quran and Sunnah, to re-enliven this pillar of our deen that unfortunately a lot of people have somewhat not really understood properly. So that is our goal, to completely free of charge offer this service to you, inshallah, hoping for the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My dear brothers and sisters, my respected elders, those of you who are listening to this, I want to impress upon you the fact that the situation is dire. It's no exaggeration for me to tell you that there are Muslims right in our backyards, right in our own neighborhoods, who are suffering in silence. Just in the last 2 years, from 2019 to 2021, we have seen an increase of over 90% in zakat seekers that come to National Zakat Foundation. And alhamdulillah, just in the last year, NZF Canada has been distributing your zakat and sadaqah to the tune of close to $300,000 monthly. Allahu Akbar. And we've been able to impact, you have been able to impact close to 110 towns and cities across the nation. As you all know, our mandate at National Zakat Foundation is that not a penny leaves the borders of Canada. We are completely focused on Canadian Muslims, helping Canadian Muslims. And there are so many people who are suffering. So the need is now. It's an urgent plea to all of you to support your Muslim brothers and sisters, and that you consider donating your zakah and your sadaqah to National Zakat Foundation, inshallah. There are a number of different projects that we are doing. From them is the NZF Feeds program, where we are disrupting the whole halal food bank initiative in a way that we want to help Muslims who constantly have to decide whether to pay the rent or to put food on the table. And we've been able to impact thousands of people through that. We have especially Muslims who fall under the fuqara and masakin category, who come and we are supporting them as well. So inshallah ta'ala, without any further delay, I will quickly also mention that if you want to grab a copy of our free completely updated zakat guide, log on to www.zakatguide.ca, ZAKATGUIDE.ca. We also have a zakat calculator. We also have free one-on-one zakat consultation with one of our zakat experts, Imam Nabil Khan, myself, Sheikh Mufti Taha Masood as well. So inshallah ta'ala, we are here at your service. Quick ground or housekeeping rules. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A inbox. if you missed this webinar and you're wondering where the copy is, then automatically this webinar is being live streamed onto our Facebook page, NZF Canada Facebook page, where inshallah ta'ala you can log in and you can watch the recording. And also, one of the questions we usually get is, do I need to have a Facebook username, password, or a Facebook account? And the answer is you don't need to. You don't need to. Anybody who does not even have a Facebook account, simply go onto NZF Canada Facebook page and you'll find this recording there. I'll hand it over to Mufti Taha Masood. A quick bio about him. Mufti Taha, mashallah, tabarakallah, memorized the Quran in his teens. He was 16 years of age. And then he began his formal studies with Mufti Asim Rashid and completed the Alim program from Darul Ulum Berry with distinctive honors, mashallah, in 2013. He is currently the director at Al Ihsan, where he teaches in the full-time Alim program, the Islam Comprehensive Program, and the Foundations of Arabic program. Over to you, Mufti Sahab. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullahu khair, Sheikh Shuaib. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nasalli ala rasulih al-kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. Alhamdulillah, as Sheikh Shuaib has mentioned, today we are very lucky to be on the first day of Ramadan, and indeed such a beautiful way to commence this month by spending our time in learning about a very important pillar of Islam and obligation, which initially was made obligatory in the month of Ramadan itself. So, as Sheikh Shuaib mentioned, inshallah, our focus today will be on the advanced aspects of the fiqh of zakat, which will include a short outlook on zakat on jewelries, and then we'll move into businesses, investments, RESPs, RRSPs, pension funds, collectibles, and more, inshallah ta'ala. Jumping right into it, inshallah, as Sheikh Shuaib mentioned, if there are any questions, you can put them into the chat on the Facebook Live, and inshallah we will try to address them as we can. We will not be looking at the introductory and basic structure of zakat. Those matters include things like who zakat is due on, when zakat needs to be paid, what nisab means. We'll briefly look at the nisab of gold and silver. However, in general, nisab on cash, liquid assets, those matters we will not be covering in today's webinar, inshallah. Starting off with gold and silver. So the nisab of gold and silver is based off of their weight. In gold, we look at the nisab of 87.48 grams. In silver, we look at 612.36. However, you see another number next over here, 595.35. This is another opinion which many scholars today adopt. It is a more cautious route. And you will hear me say this again and again throughout our program, that in zakat, it is always best to take the more cautious route while we are calculating our zakat. That is because if we end up paying extra, then any extra we paid, we will still be rewarded for it. It will count as a sadaqah for us. However, if we happen to fall short, then that amount that is remaining, that will still remain due on our account, and our zakat will not be fully discharged. Nonetheless, the difference between these two numbers is very small, so one can easily choose the 595 and go with that, and it will not make much difference on one's calculations. So once a person has this nisab, now the nisab of gold will only be used if the only jewelry that you have is gold. If you have mixed gold, silver, then you will use the nisab of silver. So you will take the value of the full amount of your jewelry, and you will see that it is above the nisab of silver, which if you have gold combined with it, then it will be, most likely it will be, and you will pay 2.5% zakat on that amount. If the jewelry items that you have are individual items, and it happens that item happens to be less than 50% gold or silver, then zakat will not be due on that. Okay, but that isn't the case when it is an individual item. When you have more items, even if they may individually be less than 50% purity, the values will be added, combined together, and you will pay zakat on the full amount. Now, in looking at the purity in things like gold, that is generally based off of the carats. So 24 karat gold is 100% pure. And then based on the amount of carats that you have below that, so 12 karat would be then 50%. And accordingly, you can see what the other amounts in there would be. Now, one important note that stones and gems, diamonds, rubies, emeralds, or any other metals like platinum rings or anything else like that, those are not zakatable. Zakat is not due on those. Zakat is only due on gold and silver. Now, in the case of gold and silver, there is one slight difference of opinion. Some scholars say that if the gold and silver is jewelry that is worn, that is used, then zakat is not due on that, because as a general rule, something that a person uses, even if it may be something of great value, zakat is not due on that. However, NZF's opinion and the majority of many scholars say that it is better to still pay zakat on jewelry if even if you are using that it is worn and so on. Now, we'll take a quick look at debts. There is a lot more in the matter of debts and how to calculate debts in zakat. However, there is a general outline that we can follow in determining what we can deduct from our total zakatable wealth. So the main thing that falls into this are debts. If you have a debt that you need to pay back in the next 12 months, and this is the lunar months, the amount of those payments that you are going to be making can be deducted from your total wealth. For example, if you have $10,000 today on which zakat would be due, but you have a debt of $3,000 that you're going to be paying off in 2 months, you can deduct 3,000 from the 10,000, and you will calculate your zakat off of the 7,000, not the 10,000. So you will give 2.5% of the 7,000, not 2.5% of the 10,000. So this applies to one-time payments you will be making in the next 12 months. It also applies to installments that you will be paying off for something in the next 12 months. So this could be in the form of a car payment. It could be in the form of a house payment. Whatever payments you are going to be making in the next 12 months, you can deduct those. But if the loan that you have involves interest or any other impermissible wealth, those amounts cannot be deducted. Only the capital amounts of your payments can be deducted from your total zakatable wealth. When it comes to cars, a lease cannot be deducted because a lease is more or less like a car rental where you are paying for that. And just as if someone is living in a rental home, you cannot deduct the rent that you are paying over the next 12 months. Similarly, you cannot deduct the lease payments that you're going to be making. If you're financing the car, then yes, in that case, you have already bought the car, it is yours. Now you have money owing on it that you are paying off. So in that case, you can deduct the next 12 months worth of payments that you are to make. Besides these two, any other outstanding balances that you may have, If you have, parking tickets, speeding tickets that are due, you have utility bills that are overdue, you have other bills, those can also be deducted from your total zakatable wealth. Moving on to businesses. Now, I'll give you a quick summary of the zakat, how to calculate zakat in businesses, and then we'll look through each of these items, inshallah. If you have a business which sells physical commodities, items, you need to pay zakat on the market value of those commodities, merchandise or whatever it may be, on the liquid assets that your company has, which will be cash or money in the bank, and any money that is to come to you because of something that you sold. You sold something on credit, the person is going to pay you. Zakat is due on that amount that you're going to receive, minus any debts or liabilities that the company may have, like we just discussed previously. In the case of personal wealth, if you have debts, you could deduct them. In a business, you could as well. If the business has that debt that is payable in the next 12 months, then that can also be deducted. Once you deduct that, then whatever amount is left, you will pay zakat on that. Now, looking at these items, whatever you see on this page here are those items that are zakatable, meaning zakat is due on them. So first is cash. Okay, and this doesn't have to be physical cash in the hand. It could be money that is stored in a bank account or otherwise as well. Zakat is due on the full amount. It is a currency in Islam. In Sharia, zakat is due on the full value of currencies. Secondly, cash receivable. This is in the case where you've given out a loan. The business has given out a loan and you are expecting that money back. Now, in the case of loans, the rule is that if it is money that you have given and are now expecting back, then you must pay zakat on that. But you have the choice to defer it to when you receive the loan back. So if you like, you could pay it year by year, or you could wait. Maybe it's a large amount and you don't have other liquid assets to pay that zakat. You can wait until you get the loan back. And then from that wealth, you could backdate and pay the zakat of all the years that passed since you had given that loan. The third point here, trade receivables. This is what I mentioned. If you had sold an item, a physical item, and you have not been paid for it yet, you are expecting those funds, you will need to pay zakat on those amounts that you are expecting. And lastly, stock and inventory. So this could vary based on the type of business that you have. We'll take a look just up ahead at some examples. But the total market value of the stock inventory that you have, whether you have, a small depanneur, a small corner store, you have a large department store, you sell carpets, you sell, I don't know, flooring, you sell toys, games, anything. If you have merchandise in stock, then zakat is due on the full value of that merchandise. Now, looking at the deductibles in the business, I mentioned one of these briefly, where any outstanding invoices, okay, and trade creditors. So anything you have ordered for your business, for example, and you have not yet paid back, you have not yet paid for, you are allowed to deduct those amounts from your zakat, because it is something that is due on you. And the rule in general, and you can apply this to your personal life or to your business, your company, is that whatever is due on you, the date of your zakat, whatever date is fixed for your zakat date, whatever is due on you on that day, you could deduct. If it's a future expense that's going to become due on you, then you cannot deduct that from your zakat yet because it's not yet due on you. Okay. Utility bills, again, outstanding utility bills, any such of those are deductible. Any taxes, anything that basically any that you have to pay that you have not paid yet, you could deduct them. Any loans, like we mentioned, if interest is involved, then you look only at the capital amount. Here, the capital repayments, you can only deduct those amounts again from the next 12 months, not longer than that. And then personal or private loans, if some member of the business has given a loan themselves, then you can treat that just as you would in a personal case, and you can deduct those. Sorry, if you owe a loan, just like in a personal case, you could deduct the next 12 months worth of that. Now, looking at some examples of stock valuation. The stock is not about investment stocks. This is meaning the merchandise that someone has in their business. So you will look at the value that the items have in their current state. Okay, so if some stocks, some commodities that you have whose value has depreciated, has reduced, you will pay zakat on the reduced value, not on what it had originally. If something is a work in process and the raw materials, like if you have a restaurant, for example, you pay zakat on the raw materials, ingredients that you have, whatever that value is. Something that's going to be delivered to you but hasn't yet, and it's such an item that in its current location, its value is different, and when it comes to you, the value will be different. You will pay zakat based on the value of it in the location that it is at, if it is there on your zakat date. And lastly, damaged stock. So if something has a fault in it, you can deduct that as well from, sorry, you will value that as well at the whatever value it has in that condition, in that state. Now, some examples, just to help us get a little bit of a better idea. A jeweler, they will pay zakat on basically all the gold and silver and other jewelry that they have, right? While normally zakat is not due on other types of jewelry, in this case, because they're not paying zakat on it as jewelry, they're paying zakat on it as their merchandise, their stock. So zakat will be due on the full amount of all the jewelry they are selling in their store. If someone is a property developer, then the property is purchased to resell and it's being sold right now, it's up for sale, then whatever that the selling price is, you will pay zakat on that amount, basically the market value of it. A restaurant, like I mentioned, you will pay zakat on the ingredients. So someone has, for example, a French fry stand, and all the ingredients they have are potatoes and oil. That's all they have, maybe some spices. So whatever the value of those ingredients are in their raw forms, because when you cook it, the value increases. So you don't have to pay zakat on that value. You pay zakat on the raw form, the raw value of those ingredients. Groceries, someone has a grocery store, then again, you will have to pay zakat on the value of all the items that you are selling in your store. Now, as a general overall look, to help determine when a business commodity is zakatable or not, you need to look at your intention. If there is a clear intention to resell the item, that's why you bought it, and now you're selling it, zakat is due on it. If it was for personal use, or there was not a clear intention, or there was a conditional intention that, I'm using it now, and maybe if the price goes up, I'll sell it, maybe I won't, then there's no zakat due on that. And the last one, where again you have a clear intention to resell, you have it up for sale, it's being leased at the moment because someone is living there or something. If it's a property, for example, or if it's an item that you're trying to sell, but it's leased out to someone, then you will pay zakat on that as well, because you bought it to sell it and you're actively trying to sell it. Someone else is using it, that doesn't matter. You will still have to pay zakat on it. This brings us into the matter of properties, which is very similar to merchandise, because actually in the case of properties, if someone's the job they do is of buying and selling properties, then those properties are like their commodities, their items, their business items. So the first three sections you see here, where something is first a residential property, you're living in it. If you are living in the property, there is no zakat due on it. No zakat is due. If it is a residential property and you're not living in it, zakat is still not due on it. Okay, if you have multiple properties, you live in them at different times, maybe, zakat is not due on any of them. If it is a rental property, a property you have bought and you are renting it out, you have no intention to sell the property, it's just on rent, then zakat is not due on that property. You're deciding to sell. You bought a property, I don't know, let's see what happens. Maybe I'm going to sell it, maybe I'm not going to sell it. In that time, the zakat date comes, there's no zakat due on that. If you bought something to sell it, and now you're trying to sell it and your zakat date comes, zakat is due on the market value. If after that you change your intention, you could change your intention too if you like, that you bought something to sell it, now I decided that I'm not going to sell it, then zakat is no longer due on that property. Now, one thing to keep in mind, that it depends on the position someone has in regards to a property, where property is being bought to sell it. If someone is only a developer and they don't own the property, maybe the developer is hiring them or to develop the property, they won't pay zakat on it. The owner will pay zakat on it if it's up for sale when the zakat date comes. But if the developer many times is a partner with the owner, then they will pay zakat just as the owner does. And however, in many cases, in developments, the units are pre-sold before anything even happens. So if that is the case, if the units are already pre-sold, then the one who is developing it does not have to pay zakat because they've sold the lots already. And the people who bought them, it depends now what stage the development has reached. If they already have it up for sale, if they bought it to sell it, then they'll have to pay zakat on it. If they bought it for themselves to live in, then there's no zakat on that. All right. Moving on to calculating zakat on investments. We're talking about the stock market investments. So we have three scenarios that we will look at here. If you have bought stocks, you have bought shares in a company, and you are a short-term trader. You are a short-term trader, meaning you buy and sell stocks, you hold them for less than 1 lunar year. Islamic calendar year. Now, day trading, although it's not permissible, if someone is doing it, the same ruling applies to them. Or other short-term trading, whether you buy and sell stocks every week, every month, or so on, this ruling applies. Now your stocks, your investments that you own, they are like your business merchandise, your business commodities, because you're buying them to selling them, you're buying, selling, buying, selling. You will pay zakat on the full amount of your investment portfolio. Just as the business owner paid zakat on the full amount of their merchandise, you will pay zakat on the full amount of your investment portfolio, 2.5% on the full amount. This is if you are a short-term trader. The second scenario, which is a little bit more complicated, is if you are a long-term investor, meaning you hold the stocks for more than a lunar calendar year. So the way to determine how much zakat you have to pay, there's two ways. We'll look at both, inshallah. There's a formula that you need to use. And that's the formula you see here, the zakatable portion of your shares. That is the zakatable asset ratio. And we'll see how you get that, times the current value of your holdings in dollars. Okay, so you need two pieces of information, but to get the asset ratio, you need two more pieces of information: the company's total current assets and the company's market cap. Okay, and these items can easily be found from a company's balance sheet or financial reports. Once you have these, let's look at a quick example. You own 10 stocks of ABC. You are a long-term investor. The companies, remember, we need a few pieces of information. So the company's total current assets are 154 billion. The company's market cap is 2 trillion. And the stock price is $120. And you own 10 of these. So your the value of your holding is 1,200, and we'll look at that below. So the first thing we needed, if you look back at the formula, we need the zakatable asset ratio. To get that, we said we do the total current assets divided by the market cap. So that's what we're going to do here. We have the total current assets of the company, 154 billion, the red with the red, divided by the market cap, the 2 trillion. And this is the zakatable asset ratio that you come up with, 0.077. Next, you need one more item here because it was a zakatable asset ratio. We have this now, times the current value of your holdings in dollars. And that is 10 shares times 120, that is $1,200. Last thing you do, you just multiply these two together with 0.077 times 1,200. And the zakatable portion of your shares is $92.40, and then you will pay 2.5% of zakat on this. Okay, so it's not that difficult of a method. You just need to get those pieces of information, and you can do this calculation. You would need to do this individually for each company for which you own stocks. If for some reason you are not able to get access to the company's financials, or you just want to be more cautious, you can use what we call a proxy. Now, the proxy is something determined by the National Zakat Foundation, where they look at the top companies, the top Sharia compliant companies in the S&P 500, and they look at the average ratio of what amount of their wealth and their assets are zakatable. Okay. That can then be used for all other companies at large. If you want to make sure you're being more accurate, then use the formula. Okay. Otherwise, it is completely okay to use this proxy of 30%. This actually has a bit extra added as a precaution because some companies' finances may vary, but as an overall average, this works out. So you take the total value of your investment portfolio, take 30% of that, and then you will pay zakat on 2.5% of that 30%. Okay. The third scenario, if you decide to cash out your zakat portfolio, then you could pay zakat on the full amount of the portfolio, minus any taxes and penalties that may be due on you based on the type of investment account that you have. So meaning whatever cash, whatever net cash will come into your hands, you will pay zakat on that amount. Okay, so these are the three scenarios for zakat on investments in the stock market. First, if you are a short-term trader, you pay zakat on the full amount. If you're a long-term, you can use the formula of the asset ratio times the total value of your holdings for each company, or you can use the proxy of 30%. And the third scenario you have here is if you're cashing out, then the amount of net cash that would come into your hands, zakat will be due on that. Pension funds. These are some of the most commonly asked questions about zakat. So this chart has been created to help you navigate what type of fund you have and how the zakat will be calculated on that. Generally, most people have this type. Okay, and we'll look at this inshallah. So starting off, and it says here RSP, so this could apply to an RESP, it could apply to an RRSP, it could apply to almost all pension funds. They generally have the same structures. Things like CPP, there's no zakat on those Canadian pension plans because that money was taken straight out of your paycheck and never came to you. It went to the government, and until you retire and start getting those funds, you don't have to pay any zakat on it. Once you start getting those after retirement, then whatever amount you receive, it'll be added to your assets, and on your zakat day, whatever assets you have, you'll pay zakat on that. Okay. Now, other pension funds, like I'm going to mention RRSP, but like I said, this applies to most pension funds. If anyone has questions about a specific type, then you can get in touch with us through the different methods that are available. So we're going to look first at what funds are making up the, what sources are making up the funds. If there are employer contributions, meaning the employer is making additions to your fund on your behalf. It has nothing, the funds are not going through you in any way. And this includes any amount that is automatically withdrawn from your paycheck. Okay. You're going to look at now at, are these amounts vested or not vested? Vested means, do you own them? Are they yours? If you leave the company tomorrow, will those funds transfer over you to your next company, or do you lose them? Now, generally, if it's being withdrawn from your check, then it will be vested. So let's say if it's just employer contributions and it's not vested, no zakat is due on that because it's not, technically it's not yours. It's a promise that the company is making that if you stay with us until retirement, we will give you these funds. So no zakat is due on those. If it is vested and you have also made contributions yourself voluntarily towards that fund, those amounts will be gathered together, and then we will need to look at what type of access do we have to that fund. If we don't have access, we'll start on this side. If we don't have access, you need to look at whether the funds are in a savings account or they are invested. If they are in a savings account, zakat is not due on them. Okay. But because there are portions of that that you yourself contributed to, and once the wealth comes into your possession, now you're giving it ahead, zakat will be due on that. But you don't have to pay it every year. You could, if you want, on that portion that you contributed, or you could backdate it when you withdraw the funds at retirement. Okay. Now, some scholars say that even this you do not have to do. If you don't have access to it, then zakat is not due on it. Once you retire, you start to receive the funds, then those will be added to your own assets, and you'll pay zakat on them as they, when your zakat date comes, whatever assets you have at that time, you'll pay zakat on. If you do not have access to the account and the funds are invested, then it says here that zakat is due, but this is again the more cautious route. Okay. A large group of scholars say that if you don't have access to it, zakat is not due on it. Simple. But what certain scholars have said that no, if the funds are invested, then you are benefiting from that. You're benefiting from the investment. So you have a type of ownership in them where you have a type of, you are exercising your right in that wealth in a way that is being invested and you're benefiting from that. Therefore, zakat should be paid on that as well, right? In that case, you could pay it annually, or you could defer it until your retirement and then backdate it. And you can use the proxy amount, or you could use the formula to determine exactly how much you need to pay. Okay, but like I said, there are scholars that say that they stop right here. If you don't have access, no zakat, no more details to look at below. Okay. If you have access, if the funds are in savings, then you will pay zakat on the full amount minus any taxes and penalties that would apply if you withdrew those funds. Right? You don't have to withdraw them, but the funds are in the account, and if you were to withdraw them, you would incur taxes and penalties, then you will pay zakat on that amount. If the funds are invested, and like I said, most pension funds fall under this type. If the funds are invested and you do have access to them, then zakat is due on them. You will calculate zakat on the proxy amount or using the formula, minus any taxes and penalties that would apply if you were to withdraw those funds. Okay. So like I said, there are many different types of pension funds out there. You can use this chart to see where your fund will, what your fund will fall under. And if you do have any other types or any other questions about these, feel free to get in touch with us through the different channels. I'll remind you about those at the end, inshallah. One last item that we're going to look at for today's workshop is collectibles. So collectibles, generally the rule is that zakat is not due because they've been purchased, they're gathered for the sake of the collection, not for reselling for a profit. But sometimes there is an intention to resell it in the future, in the far future, when the value goes up. Still, then zakat won't be due. Okay, if something has been bought to resell in short term, I bought it, a collectible, and I'm selling it, and the zakat date comes, now zakat is due on those, because again, this ends up being just like your merchandise, as though it was a business or a company. If you have something like, I mean, these collectibles could be in any form. Nowadays, NFTs are getting more and more common, which are basically digital collectibles, non-fungible tokens. But it could be anything else, sports cards, stamp collections, anything like that. Zakat won't be due on it unless the purpose is to resell them in the short term. The exception to this is coin collections, because gold and silver, they have an intrinsic monetary value. So it doesn't matter what it is being used for. Like we mentioned before, if it's being worn or if it's for a collection, you have a coin collection, the amount of gold and silver that is in there, if it has it, zakat will be due on that amount, even if you are not selling the collection. Right. And that brings us to the end of this workshop. Like we said, this workshop, the purpose was just to focus on the more advanced portions of zakat. We looked at a bit of jewelry calculations. We looked at businesses and commodities, deductibles, investments in stock markets. We looked at zakat on properties, real estate. We looked at zakat on pension funds, RRSPs, RESPs, and so on. Now, sometimes these funds could be in the form of trusts, but the types of trust always vary. So we didn't go into that. If someone does have questions about trusts, they could get in touch with us, inshallah, and we can help them out. And lastly, we looked at zakat on collectibles. Jazakallah khair, everyone, for joining us today. Ramadan Mubarak to everyone again. If anyone does have more questions, you can visit the National Zakat Foundation website, and you will find there a link to make an appointment with one of our zakat experts. It could be Sheikh Shuaib that you saw at the beginning. It could be Sheikh Nabil. It could be myself or others. Once you click there, you will see the time slots that are available. You can book a time, and we will be more than happy to sit with you one-on-one to help you with your zakat calculations. Jazakumullah khair, everyone. We hope you all have a great Ramadan. Please keep us in your du'as. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.